Hello and welcome to another episode of Next Man Up, and we are back, baby. It is season 4 of the Next Man Up podcast. We are the British and Irish Eagles, and oh my God, it's been a few weeks, and how lovely it is to see the faces of my co-hosts, Mick, the Beard, McGivern, and Phil Mount Stevens. Phil, how the devil are you, sir? I saw that newsletter you sent out today. Absolutely banging. You'll all have that in your inboxes. How are you? Well?
Yeah, I'm good. I managed to get a few hours in today while I was supposed to be, in quotes, at work. So I managed to afford a little bit of time to get the newsletter out. So yeah, you'll be finding that in your inboxes soon. Apart from that, yeah, just winding down the days until I leave the Royal Navy now, trying to find a job and all that sort of stuff.
How long you got now, buddy? Couple of months?
Well, I've got 3 weeks until I actually stop working, but I've got a couple of months before I stop getting paid. So
that's exciting times all around, not just the start of the new season of Next Man Up, but new life, new work life for you, Phil, after the new life you brought into the world last year as well, if your lovely son, Bodie. Mick, how are you, sir? You've also got 2 young whippersnappers keeping you on your toes. How are you?
As always, mate, chasing after those kids is keeping me fit, I tell you that. I've lost a bit of timber since the start of the year, so that the diet's going pretty well so far. You know, I'm able to. My goal at the start was to to fit back into my Kelsey jersey, because I bought it in a medium, and I was swore to myself I would get back into it. So I managed to do that before the Super Bowl, even though after having a few too many beers at the Super Bowl, I was maybe bursting out it by the end. But no, the diet's going well. The kids are what they are, just chaos as usual. But excited about starting season 4 of the podcast. Season 4, guys. Can you believe it?
No, I cannot. I mean, we started this podcast in lockdown. For those of you who've been listening from the beginning, I know there'll be a few of you out there listening in who have. And what started off with a tumultuous, horrendous form that we were in, culminating in Wentz leaving at the end of the second season we were doing Next Man Up. Jalen Hurts taking the reins. A good transitional year in which we finished with a winning record, all culminating then again in a Super Bowl performance for Jalen Hurts. So we've seen the entire ride that the Eagles have been on over the last 3.5, 4 seasons, and what a ride it's been. And shout out to everyone who joined us again for the Super Bowl at Passion Avenue, and for those who joined Mick up in Scotland. It was a great end to the year. We didn't get what we wanted in terms of the victory, and it's taken us a few weeks really for that to get over. I wouldn't say we are over it. I actually dropped Poria, the marketing director of the Eagles, an email today, and just to reach out and see if he can hook us up with some of the Eagles alumni, which he's kindly doing, to come on the podcast. And his first sentence back to me was that he doesn't think he'll ever get over the loss, and they're still reeling from that in the Eagles organization. So it's a tough one. It's a tough pill to take, tough pill to swallow, whatever acronym phrase you want to use, Phil. You'll probably got 15 million of them. I know that's your thing. But we move forward. We move on this season. And look, we got an exciting podcast to come up for you guys. It's going to be an exciting year all round for everyone listening in, if you're a member of the British and Irish Eagles, or just a listener to the Next Man Up podcast. What does this year look like ahead of us? Well, we're going to continue to get some awesome guests on. We're also going to get Ruben Frank on in the off-season. We'll look to be getting Dave Spadero on, and many, many more. We've obviously had Colin Wolfe, Jamal Singleton in the past. You can expect to see many more illustrious guests, and hopefully maybe some players this year as well. That'll be awesome if we get them on. The British and Irish Eagles membership is going from strength to strength. We had 150 members sign up by the end of last season, and we've just launched our new membership for 2023-24 season, looking to increase that number even further. That, of course, gets you 20% off food and drink at Passion Avenue. You get your own membership card. You get access to our UK and Ireland WhatsApp group for Eagles fans. You get a monthly newsletter, access to watch-alongs, and priority access to our trip to Philadelphia in November this year, We're at 15 people so far have signed up to our trip to Philadelphia, which is a premium trip, including tickets to the game, accommodation at a 4-star hotel, an event with ex-players for Q&A, a trip around the link itself, as well as premium tailgate tickets and much more to boot. It's going to be some trip. I reckon we'll get around 30 to 50 people on that trip in totality before the end of it. And yeah, and fantasy leagues. I forget to add fantasy leagues. You can win Eagles merch prizes. We'll be doing giveaways as well. And actually, I believe we were talking about doing a quiz for our members in the next few weeks. So lots to look out for. It's going to be an amazing season coming up. And yeah, so what are we going to talk about in this podcast? Well, first off, the new coaches. The Eagles are the first team in nearly 3 decades to lose both defensive and offensive coordinator at the same time. We're going to look at our new offensive and defensive coordinators and some of the staff on the team, which has happened since we last did a podcast. And then following that, we're going to start the first episode of our Eagle Eye in the draft. And that is going to be looking at the cornerbacks that the Eagles could sign in the draft this year. We've done a bit of research on possibilities, both with the first pick, the second round pick, the third pick, and the 7th round pick. So if you're interested in who the Eagles might pick up a cornerback, make sure you stay tuned to that as well. Well, I've started off the season like I normally do, talking far too much and not letting my co-host talk enough. So on that note, why don't we bring in Mick McGivern? How are you, sir? And Brian Johnson, offensive coordinator. Are you happy with that appointment?
Yeah, I think it was inevitable, wasn't it? It was all the rumours since Shane Steichen was confirmed to leave Philadelphia for Indianapolis, and Brian Johnson's name was top of everyone's list, top of the fans' list, top of Howie's list. It's just like the no-brainer move to make. Obviously has extremely close connection to Jalen Hurts and Jalen's family. What you want most from your offensive coordinator is that bond and relationship with the franchise quarterback, and that's what we've got. So I think it couldn't be more perfect as a situation for Jalen himself to have that continuity as well, because the offense was ticking last year. Yeah, and in the Super Bowl, we were all talking about how well Jalen performed, how well the offense was performing. And yeah, Steichen takes a lot of credit for that. But Brian Johnson is also the man behind Jalen, and behind quite a number of quarterbacks through his the time that he was playing in college football. So really happy with the move. I think he's a locker room guy. All the guys at the link love him. All the fans love him. It's an absolute smashed out the park sort of hire. I think the only question you might have is about play calling. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think Nick Sirianni came out and said that he would not be taking the play call duties on this year, that they would be done by Brian Johnson, but remains to be seen how that pans out. We'll see if he has more of an impact this year. Phil, a question that I'd seen on a number of forums in Eagles fandom was, should we be talking about Brian Johnson being a family friend of Jalen Hurts and, was with Hurts' dad when he was younger? Hurts' dad coached him, I believe, and they've got a great relationship. Should that be the first thing that people are saying about a new offensive coordinator? Or should we be talking more about his style, his ability, his knowledge, which have been spoken about? But do you think there's been too much emphasis put on the relationship part here than the actual skill sets?
Well, I think that there's a significant relationship there, so it's hard to sort of really get away from it. So it's going to be a massive talking point in terms of whether a coordinator is going to be good or not. I mean, we look more at what the general population sort of says about him, and everyone was sort of gunning for him, and it was a case of use him or lose him. So there's that factor as well. Did he get the job because we were more frightened of him going somewhere else and being successful, or is he actually going to be good? But I think it's a good relationship. This isn't just they grew up swapping pogs with each other as kids, and now he's a coach, and that's going to mean he's going to be a good quarterback. But, this is more from a coaching perspective. The guy, there can't be many people out there that know Jalen Hurts better than Brian Johnson. So I think everyone seems overly positive about the appointment. So I think there's very few people that are out there going, "Oh, he's just hired because he knew him as a kid or that. I think it's a big factor, but I don't think people are talking about it in a negative light, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. And I think Jalen Hurts came out with a quote about Johnson. He's going to be a star one day. He's going to be a big time head coach one day. It's definitely just the beginning for both of us. And Sirianni was effusive in his praise about Brian Johnson as well. And the relationship it is a good thing. A bit more about Johnson that you listeners may not know. He was a former star quarterback at the University of Utah. He actually graced the front cover of EA Sports 2010 NCAA football video game, which I thought was quite cool. A native of Baytown, Texas, he was a 3-year starter and 2-time bowl MVP at Utah, finished with the most wins in school history, 26, and including an undefeated season, 13-0 during the 2008 campaign. He finished his career throwing nearly 8,000 yards and nearly 60 touchdowns, and also ran for 12 scores and 848 yards. So before he moved into the coaching ranks at Utah, he had quite a stellar college quarterback career. So obviously the skill sets are there, which translated into quarterback. And maybe one other thing you guys might not know about it, but he actually helped Dak Prescott to become an NFL level quarterback when he moved over to Mississippi State as a quarterback. Yeah. Back in the day. And then he went to Florida, had 3 really successful years of Florida, coaching 3 All-Americans, including Kyle Trask, who finished with 43 touchdowns and was a Heisman finalist. So it's not just a relationship in it. There's a lot of stock there. There's a lot of experience there and successful, I would say as well. It feels to me like Mick Johnson has just gone better and better and better and better at everything he's done as a coach. And that's got to be positive, especially when you lose someone as good as Shane Steichen has done for us.
Yeah, I mean the CV's there. You pretty much just read it out. He's developed some really good quarterbacks. I mean, say what you want about Dallas sucks and all that, but Dak Prescott is a pretty good quarterback. Jalen Hurts is in his second full season led the team to the Super Bowl and made that massive leap that he had to make. Of course, you attribute a lot of that to Jalen as well, but you've got to give Brian Johnson his due where it is. But the other thing to consider as well is, of course, what if we didn't take Brian Johnson as offensive coordinator? Do we lose him?
Yeah, like Phil said, yeah, use him or lose him.
And then you've maybe got a bit of unsettlement in the locker room, and maybe Jalen's not quite happy about that situation, and things can get a little tense. I know it's a business at the end of the day, and sometimes you've got to let the guys walk and find jobs elsewhere if you're not going to promote from within. But like I said at the start, I think it's a great move.
Yeah, I think it's a great move all around. I think that's a very good point you make, and Phil made the same. Use them or lose them. And that would have caused a lot of unrest. Could you imagine if he didn't get the job and how Jalen Hurts would have probably reacted to that? Probably be suicidal, to be honest. We'll touch on use him or lose him in a minute when we talk about defensive coordinators and where we went on that strand. For those of you, if there are any of you out there who are interested in the offensive coaching tree within the Eagles. That wasn't the only hire that was made. The Eagles also, or promotion, I should say. The Eagles also promoted Alex Tanney to quarterback coach. He was a 9-year player quarterback in the NFL for the Chiefs, Giants, and Bucks. Quite a stellar college career as well. And he also played for the Browns and the Titans. So 2022 was his first season as assistant quarterback coach, and he's jumped up to fill in the boots that Brian Johnson has left. Other hires, Marcus Brady has been he's been hired to senior offensive assistant. He was with the Colts last year as their support offensive coordinator. And then TJ Paganetti, I'm hoping I spelled that right, has been promoted to the run game specialist and assistant tight end coach. That's going to be his 9th season with the Eagles. So a bit of a success story in the ranks for the Birds there. For those of you who don't care about the coaching tree, let's move on to something you do care about. And it's quite a topical part of the Eagles conversation now. Phil, I'm going to bring you on this one. the Eagles have hired Sean Desai, defensive coordinator. The reason I say it's a topical conversation at the moment, if you haven't had your ears to the mast, and I don't know what you've been doing, but Denard Wilson was one of the favorites internally to be promoted to be a defensive coordinator. Use him or lose him, Phil. He's left. He's out the door. He's just parted way with the Eagles. He was very liked as the backs coach by Darius Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson. They've all come out to say that they thought he should have been a defensive coordinator before the decision was made. I should clarify, not afterwards, like they were complaining. And CJ Gardner-Johnson attributed him to a big jump in his career. Are you sad to see Denard go out the door, Phil? Do you like to promote from within? Or are you happy that we've brought in Sean Desai, who, for all intents and purposes, is a Gannon-type hire?
Yeah, for me, it's a bit of a fence one for me, for lack of a better word. Why change? Why the leopard change his stripes? That's not the phrase. Anyway, yeah, the more I hear that he's very much a Gannon-esque player, it suggests to me then what was the point? But I think Gannon had his chance, and I think there's probably a lot more to it than how much he blitzed or how soft he plays. You know, the guy comes from the Fangio tree. We've had Fangio in consulting the team over the last sort of season, and he was sort of with the team quite closely for the Super Bowl. So there's a lot of linkage in that regard. In terms of knowing much about how he's done, it's sort of all I can go off is sort of his bio, which is sort of where he's been, and I'm quite liking that, the fact that he's been with Fangio quite a bit. So he was the Bears there. He's with him at the Bears from 2015 to 2018, and where he was a young quality control assistant. So he's followed him around a bit. He's had sort of Pete Carroll, Seattle, obviously a very good defensive mind. So there's a good pedigree in the background. There's a lot of stuff to read that kind of gives you sort of like, okay, yeah, no, I like this appointment. But then the more people coming out saying, oh, he's very similar to Gannon, it's like, yeah, the only thing I can answer that with is there's got to be some differences, and I guess Gannon had his time, and I know we're probably not even going to touch on it. So the opening interview for Gannon at the Cardinals was made me feel very good that he wasn't at the team anymore. I could laugh at him at some other team. I don't even know who he was talking to. I just think I just zoned out after that and then, what is this guy on? But anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
That's
no. He's already a subject of some memes around the NFL world.
He's been absolutely ridiculed, I think. But
I think it says a lot about Sirianni, to be honest, this hire, because Sirianni has got his defensive philosophy, even though he was an offensive-minded coach, and that philosophy is a bend, don't break, kill the explosive plays, focus on turnover differential. Don't let teams just one and done you, on the playbook. And he's come out to say that he does feel like it's going to be not too dissimilar to last year, and rightly or wrongly, Eagles were one of the top defenses in the league last year and broke all sorts of records with sacks. And while we didn't blitz as much, and we won't blitz as much, very much under Sean Desai either, if we continue to get the sacks, then it's hard to argue against the results. The problem is, and I think the biggest difference here, hopefully, Phil, and maybe what you're alluding to in terms of the differences, a couple of players have noted that when Desai was the defensive coordinator, when he was with the Bears, at halftime, if it wasn't going well, he could be seen to talking to his players to train them up, upskill them, tell them what they're doing right, tell them what they're doing wrong, which is something we didn't see out of Gannon very much. There wasn't that ability to be flexible.
No, I think it was. No one really had a major issue with the bend don't break defense. It's what came with it. It was the lack of flexibility, the lack of ability to adjust and change, and getting beaten in the Super Bowl with two identical plays just mirrored. Just goes to suggest that, really. So I think, there are definitely more positive points to to the situation with the fact that he can do these. That's what he's known for. So he's almost an improvement on Gannon, and it just feels very much like another sensible move. It's like there wasn't a huge amount wrong with the defense. There was no point ripping it out and bringing in someone who's completely different and going down a different route. That wasn't the need. It was just the fact that we needed someone who was just missing that little bit extra, that ability to really change a game. And it's all good and well when you're putting up 30-odd points against the Vikings and only giving it 7, but when you place a real team where you really need to coach, he just was found wanting. So hopefully Desai will come in and improve the defense again, depending on obviously who we bring back. But more concerning is obviously, like you said, with the Denard Wilson situation, the fact that he left because he was overlooked, and now there's rumours swirling around today about Matt Patricia possibly being touted in to come, which is a whole sort of basket of worms. I don't really know. That seems like a very strange move to do, to sort of bring in someone who clearly is got as at odds with one of our players, Darius Slay. Obviously, they had a major falling out when they were at the Lions. But it does worry me that who they're going to bring in at linebackers coach, especially if we're going to be losing one or two key players and bringing in sort of Nakobe Dean, and we need someone who's going to be able to bring them in satisfactorily. So yeah, I'm concerned, but I suppose if you're going for a defensive coordinator job and you get overlooked, you're gonna have to try and go elsewhere.
Yeah, it's interesting, Mick. I just want to pull you in on this one. A couple of points, really. It's funny you mentioned about Patricia, because like when we were talking about offensive coordinator roles, I wrote down Denard Wilson, use him or lose him, Matt Patricia to come back to, and you've hit the nail on the head there, Phil. How much of a impact on the dressing room does it have to let a guy like Denard Wilson go, who was loved so much by the defensive back players, and coupling that with bringing in someone like Matt Patricia, who, let's be clear, it was a rumor, nothing has been signed, sealed, or delivered. And since then, Darius Slay has come out to say, I can't remember who it was on Twitter, said, oh, he'll play, he just won't like the coach. Another player said, nah, this is different. And then Darius Slay said, yep, this is different. Basically saying that he won't play if Matt Patricia is signed by the Eagles, which you would hope would be a red flag enough for someone who they place so much value in the team at cornerback, Mick.
Yeah, well, the worst thing that could happen to a team is losing the dressing room. So it's the same in soccer. If the manager, no matter how good he is, if he has lost the dressing room, it's pretty much over. The players can sort of demand it by downing tools, and you hate to see it. It absolutely frustrates the life out of you as a football fan, as a fan of the team. But it's a real thing, and it happens all the time. Well, it definitely happens in soccer all the time. Most teams run through managers, sometimes a couple per season, don't they? But it is a worry. It is a worry especially because all year when we're talking about last year's Super Bowl run, it was all about the connection that everyone has in the dressing room, and what an atmosphere. Shagger Johnson's coming from the Saints, and he said, "I've never been to a place like this where everyone treats everyone as family," and you're going to lose that. Like, sort of what we were saying with Brian Johnson, we retained that, but we've done the opposite on the defense where we've lost Denard Wilson. And I mean, that's unfortunate, but sometimes business decisions go that way. And Sirianni felt like he had to hire the right candidate. And, I'm not in the interview room. Maybe Denard Wilson can't hold an interview. But and Sean Desai just smashed it out the park. But Patricia, whilst it's a rumour, but we'll give it a little bit of credit. I wouldn't like to see it, mainly because of everything that I've just outlined.
It doesn't seem like an Eagles move, does it?
It doesn't. No, it's just you don't want to upset the apple
cart
too much.
We tend to hire a lot of youth, like new people, fresh faces, fresh ideas. Not very often the Eagles have brought in a coach who is an ex-head coach, for example.
Yes,
Or,
I mean sometimes we bring in consultants. That has happened. We were sort of brought in some of the the more experienced, weathered coaches like Fangio, like Phil said, that started the podcast. We brought him in as a sort of consultant this year, and I'm sure we had someone from the Browns last year. I've totally forgotten his name, mind blank there, but. Yeah, I think Patricia would probably be a mistake. I wouldn't like to see it personally, but I'm excited for Sean Desai. I mean, this guy here, Sean Desai, made Robert Quinn look good. Sean Desai, when he was at the Bears, that was when Robert Quinn had an all-pro season. So, I mean, this guy must be able to walk on water. This guy must be able to divide by zero. He can do it all if he can get Robert Quinn playing some good football, because it's not the guy that we had last year.
No, I just other things to touch on there. There's a reason he was signed, and both Pete Carroll and Nick Sirianni have said his football IQ and information is ridiculous. Like, he retains so much football information and is very, very clever. Just going back to the play style, if you're listening in, what you can expect: a lot of 3-4 bases, lots of zone coverage, 2 high safety shells, coverage geared to prevent big plays, producing lots of sacks without blitzing. Where have you heard that before? We've just touched on it already. But if it works and he can be adaptable and he can be flexible in a game, then it could be an absolutely sensational hire for the Philadelphia Eagles at defensive coordinator. It got us it helped us get us to the Super Bowl this year. That kind of play. But if we can be flexible on those games where we did lose, where we weren't, then that's the perfect sauce. And Sirianni likes this mold. Clearly, Harry Roseman likes this mold. I trust Harry Roseman. I trust Nick Sirianni, and I trust them not to make sure the locker room gets broken up either. So, I think good hires all around. I feel like we probably could have hired Denard Wilson and would have been as happy if we'd hired Sean Desai. So the fact that we haven't must mean that he's considerably better in their eyes, for whatever reason, to let Denard go. All right, excellent. We are going to take a short break, and then we're going to go into the eagle eye of the draft and look at the cornerback class. Speech in 60 seconds. And we're back. We are back, and I'm excited. We get to talk about the draft. It's the only thing that has allowed me to stop thinking about the Super Bowl loss, has been researching some players in the draft, starting to do some mock drafts, and looking at who the Eagles might sign so that we run it back and go for another Super Bowl drive this year in 2023, 2024. Just want to kick it off, guys. We've just had the combine. I don't know if either of you two caught any of the combine. I watched the running backs and the offensive linemen yesterday. Bit of a difference in speed on the old 40 dash between those two groups of players. It was lots of fun while I was doing some research for who the Eagles might be drafting. And something which, Mick, you sent through to me earlier on in the week and has been very useful, has been an interview tracker for who the Eagles interviewed during this week, during the combine, in terms of players. And this is important, I feel, very important, of who the Eagles are going to go and eventually sign, or the types of people they're going to be looking at to sign as well. It's worth noting that in 2022, the Eagles did a full interview with Jordan Davis, who, of course, they selected in the first round of the NFL draft. In 2021, they interviewed Devontae Smith, who they, of course, Giants, who they, of course, drafted in the 2021 draft in the first round. Eagles don't really draft players unless they've done their full due diligence on them. And while they may do interviews during pro days with some players, it's interesting to note that they did not interview either Devin Witherspoon or Christian Gonzalez, the two top cornerback prospects that the Eagles are being mocked to draft at pick 10. Just bear that in mind for a second. If we look at who the Eagles did interview during the last week and the position group specifically, it tells a tale that we may already know of what kind of position group they're looking to draft in this class. What do you think was top of the list, Phil? Shake it out.
Sorry, man. I'm completely was deep reading something when you said that. Sorry. Completely.
Don't worry about it. Top of the list is offensive linemen. Offensive linemen. We interviewed 8 offensive linemen. Let me do some quick maths here. 6, 13, 14, 16, 23, 31. Of the 31 interviews that had taken place, the Eagles interviewed 8. More quick maths, that's 25% of their interviews were done on the offensive line. And that is quick maths because you guys can see that's not on the screen, right? 25% of our interviews were done on offensive linemen, 6 of which, 20% of all interviews were on tackles. The other 2 were on offensive linemen, guards on the interior side. They also interviewed 7 running backs. 7 running backs for a position which does not have high value in the NFL, certainly for championship winning teams. If I've seen a sign that the Eagles aren't re-signing Miles Sanders, I don't know why. That is it. The Eagles are not re-signing Miles Sanders. They are going to draft a running back this year. That is for certain. They only interviewed 2 wide receivers, which makes you think that perhaps they might go and look at the free agency market for a wide receiver 3. I think we're all in agreement that we don't think Quez Watkins is wide receiver 3 yet. He's certainly a wide receiver 4. Maybe he can improve next year. They interviewed 1 quarterback, so no quarterback factory articles are being spouted by Eagles journalists, and you'd be surprised that there were 0 tight ends. Mick, you must be devastated by that news.
No, I don't have the expectation. Don't worry. Not this time. You've got me the last 2 drafts. I will not be falling for it this time.
Is it Michael Mayer? Is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah, Michael Mayer. The top tight end in this draft, in what is, Mick, a very deep tight end draft as well this year. No need with Dallas Goedert recently signing an extension for the Eagles. If we look on the defensive side of the ball, 6 defensive linemen. So the 3 position groups which have been scouted the most are offensive linemen, running backs, and defensive linemen. Not cornerbacks, which was 4. Of the 6 defensive linemen, 4 of them were edge rushers, and 2 were interior defensive linemen. It should be noted that on the offensive line, when I said 6 tackles, a lot of them have played across the line in college as well. 4 cornerbacks, which we're going to talk about because today's episode is talking about the cornerbacks of who we could draft, and 3 safeties, which is quite a lot for safeties, and maybe an inkling that we may not be signing CJ Gardner-Johnson, or perhaps we just want some depth in that position with Marcus Epps, rumored to be quite valuable in free agency this year. So, if you don't know what the Eagles' picks are this year, where have you been? They've got pick number 10 in the first round. They've got pick number 30 in the first round. They've got pick 62 in the second round. They've got pick 94. And then 2 picks in the 7th round, 222 and 250. They are likely to get some compensatory picks as well, which will make that list a little bit bigger. With that in mind, and before I go on to talk about cornerbacks, Phil, if we look at pick 10 and pick 30, before we talk about cornerbacks, 2 questions. 1, are you wanting to sign a cornerback in the first round with one of those 2 picks? Or if we move back in round 1 to, say, the early 20s, and 2, is Harry Roseman going to sign a cornerback with those 2 picks?
It's so I'm denying about exactly what's going to happen with these 2 picks because they're so far apart in the first round, but yet they're not, because there's so much that could happen with the pick 10. It could go back. They're definitely obviously not going to go up. Could they go up with pick 30 and pick someone sort of in the 20s? And as you've just said, the amount of people they've interviewed in particular positions, it's almost, there's so many different theories, and I guess that's what people love about this time of year, is that there's just so many storylines going around, like people going, well, this is what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, we all know what Howie Roseman does, and that is he likes to move about. He likes to recoup picks later on in the draft, considering there's a big sort of hole in the middle of our draft around 4 or 5 that we're not got any picks. So when
there's
you're looking at
a Grand Canyon in the middle of our draft picks.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a chasm for sure. I mean, but when you're looking at the fact that they interviewed 8 offensive linemen, it suggests to me that they're looking at every player across the board. So they're trying to sort of say, well, depending on what we're doing, so that depending on what they're doing, they can get one at any point, or at least they've done due diligence on them all the way through the draft. So that would suggest to me that they're maybe thinking, well, we're either going to go for the top guy, or we're just going to see what falls where. And maybe you can argue that the fewer that are interviewed in a certain position suggests, depending on obviously who those people are, it suggests whether they're going to go hard, and then if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, and then they'll look in free agency. But the fact that they've done 7 running backs is interesting to me, I think.
Isn't it?
Yeah, because you saying that it means that Sanders isn't coming, it's coming back next season. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I think when you've got sort of 2 world-class talents,
surely that's the case, Phil. Sure, I mean, come on, we
No, I think they are.
We picked up Gainwell. We picked, if we have Sanders and Gainwell, I mean, unless we're going to pick a running back up in the 7th round, which we could.
I think that there's a wealth of talent at running back, and especially when you've got a talent like Robinson available at certain points, and the fact that we've got 2 picks in the 1st round. There's a lot of people that sort of there's a big rumor swell that's happening around Robinson. I think it's too early to take him at 10, and I think we'll trade up for him for sure. So I don't think that we'll end up getting him. But it is interesting to say whether we're going to go for sort of a cornerback. The fact that they've not interviewed the 2 top talents would suggest to me that they're definitely not looking in the 1st round, or maybe they're just so big for these guys.
Yeah, they could interview at the pro day, and I do believe I can't remember which. My notes will probably tell me in a minute. I can't remember which one of Witherspoon or Gonzalez didn't attend their interviews because of their injury. I think it might have been Weathers.
It was Witherspoon. He's got a hamstring injury.
That was it. He's an hamstring injury. So I mean, I read into it a lot, and maybe too much at the time of doing the research for this podcast. Perhaps they could be interviewed at the pro days, but given the opportunity was there to interview Gonzalez, at least you would think they would have taken that opportunity, right? As you're saying, Phil.
But that's what I mean. You can draw sorts of crazy narratives, especially at this really early point in sort of the postseason. We're not even at. We've literally just had the first sort of chapter of the off season, which is watching some people run uncontested for 40 yards. Throw passes, throw dimes. Oh my God! Look at this deep ball dime. That's just.
On that. Sorry to interject again for like the 3rd time. On that point, yesterday during the running back drills, Carson Strong was the quarterback who was throwing the balls to the running backs. Obviously, notes of Philadelphia there. Second, he had to leave to go to some other event, which was more important than the NFL Combine, halfway through, and 2 scouts had to come in and play the quarterback role to throw the ball to the running backs down the sideline. I watched it live last night. I don't know if you're going to see it. The Colts scout was throwing dimes 45, 50 yards down the sideline to the running backs, play after play after play. Hey, if you're a Colts fan, for whatever reason you're listening to this podcast, you don't need to go to the draft to sign your quarterback this year. Just look at your own scouting department. He's right there.
But that's what I mean now, isn't it? The combine always just feels like it's like an opening salvo. This is like, let's just get some stats together so people have got something to digest for a few weeks before the draft. There's some things that are legitimately drawn from the combine, but I think most of it is just trying to fill the hole between the last game of the season, the Super Bowl, and
you're really selling this segment of the podcast here, Phil.
All I'm saying is that, like, we're writing down all these stats. We're looking at the positions, who they've interviewed in what position, how many they've interviewed, and ultimately, it's just too early to say anything. And I think, like you said, there's players that we didn't interview that we could have pro days where we interview them later on because we want a more private, more one-on-one slot because we're actually looking at them more closely. We just didn't want to show our hand. There's just so much cloak and dagger stuff going on as well. And I just think the combine's just a little bit of it's just an opening. It's like a Miss World competition where they all come out in their swimsuits and you just which one you like to fancy. But you haven't heard what they've got to say yet.
completely get where you're coming from, and I think that's probably the case for a lot of players. But you can really drive yourself up the board with a strong combine performance, a la Jordan Davis last year. Shot up the board with his physical displays, media appearances. I remember that there was a specific one. I'm not sure it was at the combine where there was loads of planks of wood on the right with a soft top, loads of planks like a gymnastic board kind of thing, one on the left, one on the right, and he jumped up in the middle and like landed both legs on either side. If when you guys do see us live streaming, you'll see I look ridiculous right now. But he really improved his stock value by his performance in the combine, something that Christian Gonzalez has almost certainly done this weekend just gone by.
But some players also get injured. Some players don't bother going, and so what I'm saying is it's just this is keep your powder dry kind of time. So
it's fence time. It's if everyone had any doubt of your role, if anyone had any doubt of your role in this podcast, I'm glad that the first episode of 2023-24 season you've cemented it as the unequivocal fence.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's like any conclusion you can draw. It's like someone catches a 44-yard pass. Great, he's now on your radar. That's it. That means nothing more than that. Let's wait until we sort of see a bit more and get more towards the draft, I think.
Come on, Mick, give us the other angle. Why should we be excited about the combine?
Oh, is that what you want out of me? Because that's not what you're going to get out of me.
Okay, well, give me a run.
The combine is like Crufts, and then the Twitter analysts come out and start posting up videos of people doing wonderful and magical things. But it's like we see that some of the college pro days, which is them. Zach Wilson, I'm pretty sure on his pro day, everyone was creaming themselves over the throws that he was making. Look at him now. Where is he now? He's about to get replaced in New York after one season, 2 seasons, 1 season, 2 seasons. Because it doesn't tell the whole picture. You have to watch the college games. You have to watch the tape, see these guys in real games, real situations. Yes, of course, there's also the measurables, and you want that freak athlete, something that can do a little extra. You're going to get a little bit more out of them. This guy's 5'7", but he's doing a vertical of 11
39.
Feet, and you're like, well, I mean, that guy's a freak of nature. Maybe get him in. Especially if it's guys that are like lower down in the draft board as well. So you're right. It does a couple of things.
Do you think it's more, Mick, just on that point? Do you think it's more? It's easier for people to raise their draft stock when they're in the trenches than it does at wide receiver, cornerback, safety, linebacker, because you have coaches in the NFL like our own Jeff Stoutland who can teach the technique of a really physical player, a la, second time I said a la this podcast, a la Jordan Mailala. And we've seen what he was able to do there. Also, just on that point, Jeff Stoutland was he was the main coach for the offensive lineman at the combine yesterday, and watching him teach technique and step backs and before they run off was incredible. Like, he literally destroyed all of them. If they didn't do it right, he called them back. No one else was doing that in the entire draft combine. But if they didn't do it right, he's like, I'm trying to help you. Like, and when we talk about the offensive lineman, probably on the next podcast, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But do you think it's easier for the people in the trenches to raise their stock rather than a wide receiver? Like Phil says, I mean, you catch a ball 40 yards uncontested doesn't really mean much. But if your athleticism is off the charts and you can teach technique, then maybe in the trenches it's more transferable, maybe. Or am I talking at my
arse? I think you're trying to convince yourself more than convince us.
I think I am, yeah.
No, I think you make a good point. To be honest, I hadn't really thought about it like that it could benefit a position group more than others. Like you said, if your corners and wide receivers, it's not really against anyone. If you're watching a cornerback sort of start backpedaling against a ghost, it's not that impressive, is it?
It's almost riskier, in my opinion, for your cornerbacks, your wide receivers, or your running backs. And in completely opposite, it's not risky at all for your offensive linemen or your defensive tackles, because you can drop a ball as a wide receiver in a combine. It doesn't look good. Jamar Gibbs dropped his first ball thrown to him, the running back out of Alabama, and he went back and it reran the route again and caught it. It was thrown by a scout, I will hasten to add. But
the point to him is he's supposed to be a pass catching running back.
Well, exactly. That's my point. That's my point. Yeah.
No, you're right. It does. Like, he can lower stock as well as raise it. I think Keyshawn Booty, the LSU wide receiver, didn't do himself any favors either at the combine. I'm fairly sure his 40 dash time was abysmal. And most of his other measurables were much the same. He didn't have a great last year in college either, to be honest. I think we should avoid him at all costs. But
who was that you mentioned, Mick? What was his name?
It's Keyshawn Boutte.
Oh, Boutte, yeah.
But yeah, like you said, players can win or lose out of this combine. I can understand why some of them just don't bother, and they just think you can maybe see me at my pro day, where it's sort of slightly
where you've
different.
Got your own quarterback, you're on your own field, the trust is there, and you're not being thrown the ball by a scout from the Colts who was thrown down. I can see that. All right, with all of that preamble in mind, should we go and look at some cornerbacks?
Yes, why don't we?
Let's do it. We're gonna do this. So just so all you know, listening, why have we done these cornerbacks? Why have we researched these cornerbacks? Done Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. I won't go through the PF rankings. I'll do that one by one. So Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. He is slated to go in the top 10, 12. Same as Christian Gonzalez, quarterback out of Oregon. We've done Deontay Banks out of Maryland, who is slated to go perhaps in the later half of the first round, certainly the second half of the first round. And after these three, I've researched the cornerbacks who the Philadelphia Eagles have interviewed this week, which seemed pertinent. So that is Garrett Williams, cornerback out of Syracuse. That is also Julius Brents. I love these names. Cornerback out of Kansas State. And Kilo Ringo, what a name that is, out of Georgia. And finally, I haven't done much research on him because there wasn't much to find. Keydron Smith is how I'm going to try and pronounce that. And I could be completely wrong. So if you're listening and you do know his real name, do not hate me. Without going any further on, I want to start with Devon Witherspoon, not Weatherspoons. For anyone listening in the UK, it's Witherspoon with an I, and he is the top-rated cornerback on PFF's ranking. He is ranked 7. Mick, you mentioned a few minutes ago that he had a hamstring injury, so he wasn't able to complete his 40-yard dash. But there were some metrics that they were able to do. Well, first off, he's 22 years old, so he's not the youngest cornerback in the draft, but he's not the oldest cornerback in the draft. He's 5'11", so he's about average height for a cornerback in the draft. He's 180 pounds, which is very much on the lighter side for cornerbacks in the draft. His arms are 31 inches, which is middling. His wingspan is middling, and we don't know what his 40-yard dash was. Mick, do you know much about Devin Witherspoon, and did you see him play much in college last year?
To be honest, no. I didn't really watch a lot of Illinois games, so I haven't seen an awful lot of Witherspoon. I know that his stock started to really, really rise after the college season had finished. He sort of just almost came out of nowhere. I mean, it depends how much college football you really watch, but for me, I think he was a bit of a surprise riser at the time. But once you start looking a bit more deep into the stats and how he plays, how physical he can get, that he plays as a traditional wideout corner. I think he hasn't played a lot of slot snaps in his career. Like I said, he's sort of that. If you're going to draft him, he's going to be a CB1 type. The better on press and man coverage as an outside coverage cornerback. So, I mean, it looks good. I think I need to do a bit more digging into the plays that he's made in college. But I mean, all the scouts and analysts have been, raving about him. He's CB1 on most people's lists, not on my list.
Everyone's
not on mine personally.
Nor me.
But that's possibly due to my own ignorance of not really scouting him out so far. Like I said, it was what we've already said about the combine and stuff, but it was a shame not to be able to really see him and test him out. Whether or not he will be taking part in his pro day is remains to be seen. But I wouldn't be unhappy if we took Witherspoon at 10 overall. Definitely not. I think
for
a couple of these guys, I would take at 10.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, for a deep cornerback class and a good cornerback class, when we've seen the talent that's been selected high in the first round over the last couple of years, Sauce Gardner, for example, Phil, I touched on this earlier. Would you go there? Would you not go there? But Devin Witherspoon, he's had 1 year only, which is a risk for me, of elite play. So, Mick, you mentioned he kind of came out of nowhere, and that's accurate. He's only had 1 year of this elite play, but that elite play was allowing a passer rating of 26.2. That's James Bradbury, Darius Slay, early season numbers last year in the NFL. Obviously, it's in college football. He had 3 interceptions. He only allowed 22 receptions all year out of 62 targets. So 1 in 3 targets goes to the receiver. The other 2 he defends, or they don't catch the ball. He finished the country in the top 5 in completion percentage allowed, forced incompletions, passer rating allowed when targeted, and yards allowed per coverage. And then Mick, as you mentioned, he did that while playing more man coverage than any other cornerback in the class. Very feisty, incredible at reading routes, great out of breaks, and gets to receivers fast. Slightly on the lighter side, but they said that about Devontae Smith, and we know how that turned out. One thing to note, a couple of things to note, Phil, just with Devin Witherspoon. Very aggressive. A lot of scouting reports say he'll get flagged a lot in the NFL. Not something Eagles fans would like to see. We're as bad as, if any, if not worse, when Eagles players get flagged for silly mistakes, and also just a 1 year of elite play. With those 2 things in mind, Phil, would that make you reticent to choose him at 10 if he was there on the board?
Yeah, I think you're making some valid points, and also the injury and the fact that he didn't take part in the combine, to contradict my earlier point, is a concern. Like, if you go there and you perform, there's no worries, but people are always going to be niggling about the injury, lack of experience, and if he is an aggressive player, in this league, we all know what it's like. Super Bowl being the most recent example of getting flagged in that position, and how infuriating it can be. But that being said, there's a reason why he's up there, ranked 6th by PFF, and the stats you read out, the 22 receptions allowed and 62 is incredibly impressive. With 3 interceptions, I think he's there for a reason, and I think you would be crazy to pass on it. So if he was there, you'd have to have a really good reason, or a much better player in mind for a much better reason to not go for it. I don't think he'll be there necessarily. So I think you'll be looking more at Gonzalez and beyond if you were to take a cornerback in the first round. But again, we just don't know what the Eagles are planning to do. But you want an aggressive player. Can you coach that player to be more smarter with the aggressiveness? Or are you just signing a beast that you're sort of letting out of the cage and just hoping for the best, that he's just going to make absolute plays? I mean, I know different positions, but when you're looking at Diggs at the Cowboys, that kind of rings a bit true, in the sense that unbelievable stats, but also got torched and smashed a couple of times. So is he going to be sort of a 50-50 player in the league? Because it's just a completely different game. You're playing against different types of athletes. If he's going up against Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase in the league, is he going to have those kind of stats? So I think you've got to pick out the bits that mean the most to you. And we just don't know what the Eagles are looking for. So personally, I'd be put off by it, taking the risk on him with the aggressiveness and the injury. But I think if he's there, you've got to have a good reason not just a niggling concern. You've got to know exactly what you're giving up.
Yeah, and I mean, being a sorry, mate, go
on. I was just looking some stuff up about Witherspoon. Like I said, I didn't know an awful lot, and I was just having a look at the Illinois season. And they only had. They didn't have a lot of losses during the season, but they only played 2 ranked teams. That's in the top 25, and one of them was against the University of Michigan, who finished 3rd overall ranked team in the country, and they held them to 19 points on the day, and it took like a 4th quarter comeback for kicking field goals for them to win that game. That's pretty impressive to keep. Blake Corum, who's the running back at Bay. David probably didn't play a big part in that, but keeping the quarterback JJ McCarthy quiet on that day as well is quite impressive. So that's something important to note, I think.
That's very important to know. On the PFF draft notes, do you know who the player he was compared to?
Darius Slay?
Slay, yes, it is.
Big play Slay, sorry.
Answer before you could. Yeah, big play. Don't call him Darius. That's right, yeah. Jesus, don't call him Darius.
I'm going to be put on the Patricia list.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. It was quite funny in our UK Eagles WhatsApp group. It was a question went earlier. What did Matt Patricia do to piss off Darius Slay? I will not read out the suggestions that were put in that WhatsApp group, but it was... rather humorous, shall we say, this morning to read through some of those, quite wide of the mark suggestions, shall we say. Let's, Mick, I think me and you are very much aligned on this. I'm in love with Christian Gonzalez for a number of reasons. One, he's 20 years of age, and like Bo Wolf of the Birds of Friends podcast, I look at age as a huge factor when I'm drafting talent, especially when I'm drafting top talent, because I want them to be young when it comes around to re-signing them if we want to re-sign them. I don't want them to be 23, 24, and then if we want to re-sign them, all of a sudden they're 28, 29 years of age. You sign someone at 20, we're re-signing them back at 24, 25, and you've got another whole contract out of them. So being 20 years of age and being a top 10 projected draft pick by PFF, which is Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon, is a huge plus for me. 6'2", which is incredibly tall for a cornerback. He ran a 4.38 at 6'2". That is monstrously fast for somebody 6'2". 32 arms, so bigger than Witherspoon, and also had a 41.5 vertical jump, which is massive, especially for a 6'2" guy as well. Mick, he's a do-it-all corner, can fit into any scheme. He had 4 interceptions and 9 forced incompletions last year. He's a great tackler in the open field. He only missed 6% of his attempts at tackling in 2022. He's incredibly fast for his size. I mean, what is not to love about Gonzalez? I would have him over Witherspoon personally.
Yeah, I've also got him over Witherspoon. I mean, listen to me talking like I'm a big shot draft guy. I know all the players and draft scouts. Send me over to the States next year for the for the scouting combine. No.
Well, those listening in, if we haven't mentioned it already, Mick not drinking tonight for the first time in I think 27 years. So if you notice any difference in his performance, do message us in, and if we do need to make sure that Mick's cupboard is stocked up with whiskey for the future, then let us know.
Maybe you'll be able to understand me by the time the podcast finishes, but then most people probably can't understand me when it starts, so that's also.
I think we need to start a GoFundMe page for Mick's whiskey collection, because there's nothing worse than a Scotsman without a whiskey collection.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about.
Sad, isn't it? I'll play my small violin. Don't worry, payday's only a couple of days away, and I'll restock. And don't worry about me, I'll be fine. But yeah, Gonzalez, Gonzo, love him. Absolutely love him. I think, going into the combine, already loved him. What he did at the Combine, smashed out the park. But I kind of hate that a little bit because it puts him on everybody else's radar. Stock rises, and now I'm afraid he's going to be gone by the time the Eagles are picking. At number 10, the question is, would you trade up for a talent like that? I'll put that to both of you, but not just now. I just want to have a look at some of the...
I will zip my mouth.
Some of the stats. You know, his 40-yard dash, like you said, is 4.38 on the day. His 20-yard split was 2.55. His 10-yard split 1.54. Again, these are elite stats, and this is a guy who's like fluid in movement. You know, he can change his hips any direction. He's like Shakira. He's absolutely beautiful. I love everything about him. You can tell already that I've got my hopes made up all on this one guy. But would you trade up from if the price was right or not?
Oh, Phil, shall I go first?
Yeah,
I'll go first. I want to just touch on his pros and cons first, right? So we talked about his size and his movement. And he can line up anywhere. This is a guy you build your defense around. This is a guy you build your secondary around, and we're going to need that with Darius Slay being 32 years of age. We're going to need that with James Bradbury testing free agency. There's a chance we don't bring CJ Gardner-Johnson back. You need someone like this to build your defense around. In complete contrast to Witherspoon, there are those who say he lacks a bit of a killer instinct. And he could impose himself a little bit more and could attack the ball a little bit more than he does. So that's kind of an interesting take on the personality. Which of those fits in Philly? Probably Witherspoon if you're going to look at it from a personality trait perspective. But his talent is unquestionable, and he's played a lot in zone as opposed to man coverage as Witherspoon has had. And with, as we mentioned earlier on, our new defensive coordinator likely to play zone more than press man, then that's something that would suit the scheme a little bit more. Would I trade up to get him? I'm sure Phil's got many caveats, which I'm going to throw a few in there as well. I mean, where are you trading up? Are you trading up to 8? Are you trading up to 7? I'm not trading up more than 7, even if I
we'll just assume like there's going to be 4 quarterbacks taken, and you know there's only another 5 guys there. 2 of them, or one's going to be Jalen Carter, the other one is going to be Will Anderson. So there's only like another 3 on the board. So say we're trading up maybe a couple of spaces.
You're not going more than 7 or 8 for him, no matter what happens. I don't think on the board. Although we did see Sauce Gardner-Johnson shoot up the board last year, and rightly so. I haven't seen the season he's just had. Do I see Howie Tradesman? I was just about to call him Howie Tradesman.
That's his name. That's his name, because we're not picking at 10 or 30. It's Howie Tradesman.
Is Howie Tradesman? That is his name from now on. That was completely on accident as well. Do we see Howie Tradesman drafting up to sign any player? Does he fuck?
He did it for Devontae.
He did it for Devontae, but that was from what, 13 to 10?
Yeah, but they traded back before that pick, so technically that was still a trade back.
Yeah, I'm not having that as the same as trading from 10 into the top 7, 8. I mean, that's you're talking serious draft capital that it costs to trade up when you're in the top 10. Even if you're trading up from 6 to 5, because teams really want a player, you're going to make them pay the house. And I don't see how we pay the house. Not when you have other options available in a deep cornerback class. Not when you have options on the offensive line that he could take. Not when you have options on the defensive end position. All of which Howie could quite comfortably pick with the number 1 pick of the draft. Would I like to see him trade up to 8 to take him? Probably. Do I see it happening? I put my mortgage on it not happening.
Yeah, I'm probably going to agree with you.
Katie just heard that in the corner and went, please don't.
I'd probably agree with you with the most part there. I think given the fact that how many quarterback needy teams out there, so there's probably going to be at least 3 or 4 quarterbacks going in the top 10. And other positional needs that are out there for other teams. I think there's no need. They have to really want him, and the fact they've not interviewed him at the Combine was already on the back foot in terms of that line of thinking. So I would say very much 10's a good place to be in terms of someone's good is going to be there at 10. It might not be a cornerback, but hopefully it is someone like Gonzalez, because I think if Gonzalez is there at 10, it's a no-brainer. Hopefully a team that, took Trayvon Walker ahead of Aiden Hutchinson last year is there taking Witherspoon first. So that's another position hopefully gone. You've got that offensive tackle that shouldn't really escape me, but
Paris Johnson.
Right now.
Paris Johnson.
No, it wasn't that one, but it's more of a case of he excites me too. You said like you two were going to be. No,
sorry, I'll stop shouting names at you.
Just shout random names. Let's see how this podcast goes.
Brian Badundy. Sorry.
So I'm with you on the Gonzalez Mountain because I think if we're going to go for him, it would be because he falls to 10. I don't think how he trades up, because when you're getting into the top 10, you're starting to look at future first round picks, or we're looking at losing our pick 30. I mean, you can maybe argue that a team looking to trade him from second round to 30 might be willing to trade into 30, so we can trade around with that. But
that could happen.
But ultimately, I just like Howie Tradesman. He gets.
You could see someone going from.
That was smooth, though. Smooth.
Howie Tradesman, I love it. I genuinely, completely unintentional. I can see Howie trading someone around 36, 37, wants to move up to 30, around that, because I don't think there's a huge difference in talent across the board when you look at pick 30 to pick 38, 39, 40 even. In that 30 to 40 bracket, there's probably not. I mean, top 10, top 12, top 13. I mean, there's a big gap between that and early 20s, but the gap between 30 and 40, I don't think is that big, depending on the position group you're looking at. So I think that could be a great shout. Phil, maybe how he doesn't trade away his 10 to go to 18. Maybe he trades away his 30 to go 38, and then maybe pick up a 53 or something alongside it to make that draft class a little bit bigger for 2023. That's interesting. Mick, you answer your own question. You trading up to 8? I'll give you 8. You trading up to 8 to get Gonzalez if he is still there on the board?
I love this guy, man. I am taking it.
You are?
Well, they'd be contrarian for the sake of the podcast. Yes, I will.
Yeah.
All
right.
Yeah, I mean, see if you're going to get an elite cornerback. I mean, cornerbacks are not easy to find. We have struggled for years and like before Darius Slay, we've had nobody at cornerback, and we have died on the outside for many years. And we need the replacement. Like you said, Darius is only getting older, and James Bradbury's gone. What we're left with is Zach McPherson on the outside. Can you imagine that?
No.
Are we talking about putting Maddox back to the outside?
No.
Of course, we can test free agency. We tried that with Steven Nelson with mixed results. The top cornerbacks don't hit free agency because they're elite players. We had to trade for Slay. The only other time we've taken a cornerback in the first round was Lito Shepherd back in 2002. So that,
knowledge
21 years ago. So it's time. Howie, get the fucking finger out and get my boy home.
Hey, let me put a horrendous scenario to you. Eagles sign Matt Patricia as their defensive coach. Darius Slay leaves. CJ Gardner-Johnson leaves in free agency. And James Bradbury also leaves in free agency. The Eagles don't take a cornerback in round 1, and we're fucked.
Why would you do this to us?
Sorry. Just to note for anyone wondering, if we were to trade up to 8, the Atlanta Falcons currently hold that pick. If we were to trade up to 9, Carolina Panthers hold that pick. I think it's unlikely that the Falcons stay at 8 unless they are planning on picking up Richardson, the quarterback. Just interesting to note the teams we'd have to trade up with. None of which are.
Before that, he had a combine.
Oh, talking about guys who improved. Yeah, he did.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very, very interesting all around. See, Phil at the start just said, combine's not interesting. Chat with all this stuff. Look at all this interesting content we're talking about. All right,
he threw some tremendous balls with no pads on.
Yeah, that's true. But he did have a cannon. And
no,
he was
I all
fast as
joking
hell.
aside, he did have a good combine, and I'm quite excited by him. I'm really looking forward to see where he goes, purely from a fantasy football perspective, because I feel like it's going to be an interesting player to pick up wherever he goes.
I mean, you're talking Jamar Chase. You're talking Jalen Hurts. You're talking Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, like in one. If it comes out now, a bit like Witherspoon, he's only had 1 year where he's really shown what he's got. So there's a lot of ceiling there, as opposed to.
Were there not comparisons to Cam Newton with him? Or am I
no, he said Cam Newton was his idol going.
Oh, was his idol.
There may well be comparisons as well. Shall we move on? As I see Mick highlights the next cornerback on our little research document here. Deontay, but with an E, not an A, like Slim Reaper. Deontay Banks, or is it Deontay? Deontay Banks, a cornerback out of Maryland. He is PFF ranking of 18, so he's due to go in the second half of the first round, but only just at the moment. He is 22 years old, so a little bit older, same age as Witherspoon. 6'1", so again, he's tall. 6'1" is tall for a cornerback in the draft. He weighs 197 pounds, so he's, again, a similar size to Gonzalez. 31 and a half arms, similar. 40-4.35. That is really quick. And get this, at 6'1" rather than 6'2", he had a 42-inch vertical jump. Now, to put that into perspective of the other cornerbacks in the draft, he was fourth of all cornerbacks in the combine with an athleticism rank of number 1 with a score of 98, which is crazy. We're going to talk about a cornerback who is even more explosive in a minute. But what you
I was going to say, what does that even mean? What does a score of 98 in athleticism even mean?
So that basically means age, weight, dash, vertical jump, broad jump, all those kind of things. So the highest, the longest broad jump, so he can jump the furthest from a standing still position. The highest vertical jump, which is where he hits the little thingies that fly around. How fast he was. And I guess also his height, weight, and age. I don't know if they're factored into that score. But either way, he was ranked number 1 in those categories. Phil, does that placate you there?
Yeah, it's just the way that people throw these things around. It's like, I know it's probably based on all the stats, but it's just like, he's ranked number 1 with a score of 98. I'm like, I don't even
expect
know.
Listeners to give me this kind of shit, not my co-host. Right, Deontay Banks, number 1, with an athleticism score of 98. Mick, Maryland, did you see any of them last year? Phil, did you see any of Maryland last year? I didn't.
Every day.
Yeah, that's Tua's brother is quarterback for them.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
There you go. A little bit of knowledge there.
A little nugget.
Yeah, a little nugget. I didn't watch an awful lot of Big Ten. To be fair, but I mean, it's hard. It's difficult to watch so many games over here. You don't really have a Game Pass sort of thing like the NFL does, so you're sort of restricted to whatever BT Sport decide to show on any given week, or the ESPN player decides to show on any given week. There's not like an all-encompassing red zone type show that you could watch, and you watch every touchdown from every college stadium from
there should be though.
From Notre Dame to East Bumfuck Stadium. There should be. Damn right, I agree. There should be, but Deontay Banks. You say he's got all the measurables. He's on PFF's position. He's 9th in the position rank on PFF. But like you said, because he performed so well at the combine, his stock is probably rising from there. Again, he looks like a good player. Someone that we would be looked to. Where you say you try to pick this guy up, Liam? Are you thinking the back of the first?
Back of the first, unless I've got my PFF ranking completely off on my research. He's looking around pick 30. Although I've done quite a few mock drafts, and while he's ranked in the kind of 20s, in terms of when you should pick him, he seems to still be around in the 50s. Now, I don't know if it has anything to do with the simulators and the teams know something I don't know, and I don't know enough about college football to give a better, more professional, reasoned argument as to why that would be. But for some reason, he keeps dropping in simulator drafts, and that could be because he had a shoulder injury in 2021. So he's had a few injuries during his career. He's missed quite a lot of football. He's big, has good agility as well. I don't know. I mean, all of his physical tangibles seem to stack up really well. In terms of cons, he has a problem with awareness, and I think that's one of the big concerns that perhaps scouts are looking at. He's not very good at recognizing routes. When there's complicated routes, he gets lost when they're crossing over the middle. When he's running back with his back to the ball, he gets nervous, he gets antsy, he gets frantic, and he scrambles back, he flaps a little bit.
You're not selling this guy, mate. You're not selling this guy at all.
No, I know, but
he can run. He can run.
He can run. He's big. He's aggressive. He's physical. So if you're playing him in man, he's going to be. If you're playing in coverage, he's going to be better in coverage than he is going to be better in. If you're playing him in zone, he's going to be better in a zone scheme than he is going to be in a man scheme, because he'll be able to use his physicality at the point of the route when they converge. He can move very fast. He's an outstanding tackler as well. So there are a lot of players to have. Do you know who his comparison is?
Tell me.
Eli Apple, which is, Eli Apple was a good cornerback for a good few years. Phil's laughing again. Where are you getting that from?
He's getting the beef with Tyreek Hill, doesn't he?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just going on Eli Apple at the moment. Isn't exactly someone I want to be drafting their players compared
not
to.
Not now, but he's had a decent career as a cornerback, and we're not talking about someone who's going in the top 10 here. So I don't know. Look, his physical attributes are off the charts. He's got great recovery speed. He's big. He's physical, but he lacks a bit of awareness. And he's had a big injury. So, yeah, I'm not really selling this guy much at all, am I? What do you reckon, Phil? You taking him at 30? Do you reckon he drops to 62? Do you take him at 62 if he does?
Yeah, I think there's a chance that a player like that will drop a little bit further than you think, based on especially what you've just detailed to us. And I think
someone listening in is going to have watched all of his tape last year and is going to destroy me in my DMs for my take on it.
But I think for the Eagles situation, I think they'd either be looking to take one of the top two, or they'll be picking someone up later on.
Or in free agency, Phil, or in free agency like we've done over the last, or trading for someone, or in free agency like we've done the last few years. That's worked out pretty well. James Bradbury, Devontae Smith, run it again, Howie. You don't want to draft them, then get them free, get them the other way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff. All right. Should we move on to Garrett Williams, cornerback, Syracuse. Mick, you watched much Syracuse football last year?
Won the orange. Let's go orange.
So tangibles again. We're talking about a player who has similar, again, a lot of burst. And it's just worth noting. I know I mentioned it earlier on. So the Eagles did interview Garrett Williams. They have not interviewed any of the first three people we talked about. So this is the first player that they did interview. He's 5'11", so a good size for a cornerback. He's 21 years old. So he's not 22 or 23. Again, probably good size. 192. I'm going to repeat myself. It's a good weight to be at cornerback. 31 arms. His 40 dash was 4.38, so he's fast. And he had a huge jump, 42. So just to put that into comparison, Gonzalez jumped 42 at 6'2", touchy 6'3". At 5'11", Garrett Williams, he's got bounce. He jumped the same, 42 at 5'11". So seriously impressive. Seems to be a theme with some of the quarterbacks we're talking about here. He had a torn ACL, which ended his 2022 season after 7 games. He had a very good career grade of just touching 80, which is impressive enough as it is. Worth noting now, and Mick, I don't know if you picked this up, but a couple of analysts have talked about it being a bit of a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. Phil, that's one of your phrases. I'm sure I've heard you say that before on this
that is
podcast.
one that I tend to use.
in the Syracuse defense, because of his 907 career snaps, only 35% came in man coverage. He's got incredible foot movement. He can mirror receivers effortlessly, and he will be covered by teams who run a man-heavy scheme, which ironically is not the Eagles. Significant success in the ACC, led the league in pass breakups in 21 and 22, and also has been a 3-year back-to-back ACC selection over the last 3 years. Although it says he's suited to man-heavy schemes, surely the stats he produced in the combine and the fact that he can stay in a wide receiver's pocket still work pretty well for zone, Nick, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think so too. I quite like the sound of this guy, to be honest with you, Liam. Like you said, like if you're bringing him in to, be an outside shutdown corner, you could probably get that from him. And if it's more of a cover 2 corner, you put him in zone coverage, and a guy that can be physical, can defend the flats, the shallows, sort of forcing the opposing quarterbacks to throw over the top, and deal with the safeties. That's the sort of guy that can do that role and really impose himself as well. Like you said, he's got quite a big frame, but from, like you said, from the combine stats, from some of the scouting notes, looks like he's really fluid in movement as well. So that's quite rare for a guy that's he's like you said, he's 5'11", 6 foot. So that's the same height as me, actually. So I don't fancy myself against AJ Brown. To be fair,
there's two flexes on this.
That's not a flex.
There's two flexes on this podcast. 6 foot and losing all the 10 kilos or whatever it is you lost. You fit into a medium. Feck off, will you? Talking to someone who's 5'9" at a push over here, and he hasn't lost any weight since Christmas.
Well, got to put the work in. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know. That's what the personal trainer keeps telling us. Yeah.
But the concern there is the torn ACL, and God, doesn't that just remind you of Landon Dickerson?
Yep, absolutely.
We've already been there and done it, and we said don't take him. He's got an injury history; it could be a catastrophe. And
he had 2 ACLs, didn't he, on different knees?
Does it again? Yeah, I think Cam Jurgens also come with an injury-prone history as well. And although we've not seen a lot of him, I expect to see a lot of him next year. But I think if we looked at Garrett Wilson in the second round, if we trade back in the first into the early second, I could be convinced to take this guy. Like I said, I think cornerback is a huge need for Philadelphia, and we need to draft someone in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, completely agree. Phil, you'd be happier with Garrett Williams than you would be with Deonte Banks if we took him in the second round, around 60, we felt?
It was a no right up until Mick made that really good point about the Eagles doing their due diligence with injury type players that sort of you see the acronym ACL and you immediately go, ugh, no. Maybe slightly different from a cornerback to an offensive lineman, probably, in terms of what the risk of re-injury is and what an ACL means to that type of player. But the fact that the Eagles is the only one, it's the first, it's the highest one that the Eagles have interviewed, obviously it's just they want to get to know him better, or that they see something that they want to figure out a little bit more early on. So the fact that maybe the Eagles think that Gonzalez and Witherspoon are going to be gone, and they're not interested in trading up, so they're going to start looking at these guys and going, actually, we're not going to pick one with 10 or 30. It's going to be sort of late second round pick, maybe a trade up or a trade down into sort of like the end of the second, beginning of the third, maybe to pick up a pick or two, maybe later on. This is the sort of player that you'd have to be targeting for that kind of strategy. And I think that's the only sort of opinion I really have of him. You've already touched on the measurables and that, so
no,
I'm not going to cut.
I completely agree. I think it's definitely a case, I think, here for the Eagles trading 10 or 30 and picking up a mid second round pick, and as well as whatever pick they managed to get, and taking someone like Garrett Wilson, Will Williams, I should say, not Garrett Wilson, he's a different player altogether. Was he the guy who was drafted for the Jets last year?
Yes.
The wide receiver.
Great wide receiver, Ohio State. Yeah.
Very, very good. All right, cool. Conscious we're now 30 minutes in, so let's try and breeze through the next two very, very quickly. So Julius Brents, his PFF rank is 62. What's the Eagles' third pick in the draft? Number 62. So at the moment, Julius Brents from Kansas State is ranked 62. He is fecking massive, as we would say in Ireland. He is 6'3.5", touching 6'4". He's got 34 arms. He's a good weight, 198.
34 arms.
34 arms, big, right? For a corner.
Octopus.
Yeah. That's like Josh Sweat arms, but for a cornerback. He's got 34 arms. His vertical jump is still big because sometimes big players don't jump that high. And that sounds silly, but it's true. It's still 41.5 vertical jump. His 40-yard dash is still 4.53. So, it's very decent for someone who's 6'3.5". Obviously not the 4.38 from Gonzalez at 6'2", but I think that's a decent pace. He is the perfect classic zone cover that you would want for a Sean Desai defense. He is an outstanding blend of size, length, and leaping ability. He's great on the reroute. He's got a really good eye for discipline from zone, and he's got ball skills to win the battle when the pass is thrown up there at the point of contact. He has instincts to move at safety if he need to, although I highly doubt it, to be honest. He's had a great career so far. All Big 12 conference selection in his first year with the Wildcats, recorded 49 tackles, 3 for a loss, 1 interception, and 2 pass breakups while starting all 13 games. He ascended to the first All Big 12 in 2022, leading Kansas State with 4 interceptions and 45 tackles, 3.5 for a loss, and 4 pass breakups in 14 starts. I mean, I've got a list of pros and cons here, but I'm already thinking, this is my guy. This is the guy that I want to. This guy I want to sign. I want to sign him at 62. I'd be very happy with Garrett Williams if we can get him at 62, or maybe a little bit earlier, depending on what trades you make. But for me, Julius Brents, he was interviewed by the Eagles as well. A full interview, not just a conference interview. He had a full face-to-face interview. This is the guy that I'm targeting to be my zone quarterback alongside Darius Slay for 2023, and I do think he'd be a starter straight away, being picked up with our second round pick. Mick?
Yeah, I don't have any arguments for everything you've just read out to me. He sounds like he could definitely do a job for us. Kansas State Wildcats, yeah, they won the Big 12 last year. They had a phenomenal season. So he's coming from a winning program. Yeah, no qualms from me.
Phil, some of the cons that have been put on a scouting report can be duked out of position on press release. Struggles to stay in phase through break patterns. So again, it's all about these routes being run and maybe not being 100% on track with them. False steps and playmaking mindset can be exploited by misdirection. This all talks about if you're a quarterback and you're an offensive coordinator or you're a head coach, you can disguise what you're doing to fool him, and that maybe he's a bit too one-track minded in his playmaking ability and his it feels like he's the kind of guy you tell him what to do, he's going to do the best job for you if you give him the instructions he has. But if it gets a little bit too confusing, then he can get blown up a little bit. And that's being a little bit harsh, but if I'm reading, that's what I'm reading out of those cons. But I mean, when you look at the pros, I mean, he's perfect for zone. Spies the quarterback well, explosive leaps, wins at the point of catch, rare blend of size and athleticism, springs from the hips. I mean, all of them are what you would want, but he can be confused a little bit sometimes on the play. Is that something you would want?
Yeah, so the deficiencies are the coaching side of things. That would raise questions. If the Eagles are going to be looking to draft someone like him, then you're going to really have an excellent backs coach to be helping this guy. Sorry,
which they've just lost in Denard.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the question mark for me. The fact that obviously another one that the Eagles have interviewed suggests to me that this is where they're targeting the later rounds. They're going to be looking at these guys, but I'd be concerned if they took a guy like this, if they haven't got someone in who they believe can coach him well, or depending on who we've got next to him. If we do keep Slay, if we do keep Bradbury and let Slay go in a twist of fate, are we going to have someone there that's going to be able to sort of work well alongside him and bring him on as well? So again,
Slay could help him quite a lot because he's a similar kind of player in terms of trying to make the big play Slay, but also could be his detriment in the other aspect.
But there's just question marks around that side of things. But when you go the later the rounds, the more question marks there are going to be. The pros and cons are getting bigger and bigger as we go down this list.
Of course they are,
it's harder to really pick the good points without kind of getting concerned about the bad points. But at the end,
and there'll be more stuff that comes out in the next few weeks and months about next 6 to 7 weeks before the draft about these guys that will help them move up and down the board. And obviously, this is our first look at some of these prospects, and I'm sure our position and opinion will change on them as we go throughout the next few weeks. So there's no sticking to the guns here, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. I find it quite interesting when the pros and cons get more vast the further down you look. It's so true. Like at the top, you're like, oh my God, well, is this guy Jesus? Like, can he do no wrong? And now it's like, ooh, stiffer hips than you like is one of the cons I'm looking at. The next cornerback we're talking about, he definitely isn't no Shakira.
Well, one of the biggest cons reading the list as you were talking then is that with his feet stall instead of running through the tackle, now tackling in the secondary has been our biggest fault that we've sort of get frustrated with. The tackling was pretty poor last season, so I'd be keen to be getting a guy who's going to be able to sort of commit to it and go hell for leather and smash through. And if this guy isn't that, then are we just leading ourselves to another defense where the dink and dunk really worked against us because the tackling was so poor if you past the defensive line before you're looking into the interception territory?
Yeah, good point. Talking back to Deontay Banks was one of the better ones at tackling. It's very, very interesting all around. Okay, so the last person we're going to look at is Kilo Ringo. What a name that is. Cornerback for Georgia. Now, Mick, surely you watched a bit of Georgia last year. You love a little bit of the Bulldogs. He is also 20 years of age, something that I like, and I'm not shy about saying he also met with the Eagles. He is 6'1", so again, he's a good size. He's 207 pounds, so he's a big lad. He also ran a 4.36 and had a 33.5 vertical jump. Worth noting that every other cornerback we've talked about so far has had a vertical jump of over 40, and this guy had a 33.5. That's a huge difference. Huge difference. That's a 30% difference if you look at the uplift, or at least a 27% difference less of a vertical jump than any other player that we've talked about so far. However, they reckon he's one of the most freakish athletes in the draft. He clocked around 23.5 miles per hour in his pre-draft workout. Most wide receivers last year did in top 22.2. So he's absolutely electric. Mick, have you seen much of him? Big lad.
Yeah, I have seen quite a lot of them. This is what I was trying to say when I was talking about Devin Witherspoon at the start of the segment, and that you get the college season finishes and there's a sort of consensus top player at each sort of position, or even going throughout the season, and then guys just emerge out of nowhere, and Witherspoon's one of them. Gonzalez is sort of another. But Kelly Ringo was the consensus CB1 heading in throughout the season in college football, and towards the end of it as well. And he was being, on a lot of the sort of before the NFL season finished, so a lot of the big boards had Ringo going in the top 10, top 15, and now I've seen instances where he's fallen to the second round, or I think I seen a mock on Twitter and he was in the third round. Someone picked him up, and
he's ranked 74 on PFF. 74.
Yeah, this is what I mean, and he's been a steady faller down draft boards since the season ended, which is quite surprising. Like, I am not firmly in the Ringo camp. I think he's a good player. I really do. I mean, Georgia Bulldogs, if he's a starter for that defense, then you know that he's got a good pedigree and he's coming from a really, really good program. These guys,
and the Eagles want to draft. They want to draft out of Alabama and Georgia. They've shown that over the last.
Exactly. I mean, he's a national champion. The guy knows how to win. He's done it against some of the biggest programs. I mean, you're talking about the SEC. He's faced Alabama. He's faced Nick Saban. He's faced Bryce Young and all these guys. He's been there and done it. He's faced pro-style offenses. That's what a lot of the guys that are coming from smaller schools don't tend to face, like these, big oppositions, and they're, some of the wide receivers that they're facing, they're not up to caliber. They're maybe getting drafted, or some of them undrafted. Some of them, go and flip burgers for a living. In some of the Power 5 conferences or even lower. But if we're talking about the SEC, and it's just a whole different game. I mean, how many times have we said, for the Eagles, like, just draft out the SEC, because that's the winning combination. That's the elite division of college football. It just is. And Ringo, whilst, like I said, I wasn't massively high on him, I think he still would be a really good pickup for the Eagles. He said that he ran that 40 dash in 4.36, and that's a phenomenal time. So I mean, he can run, but he can't jump. Looking at his stats here, but we might not need him to jump. I mean, if he's got that sort of freak athleticism, like you said, if he's able to pedal back and match wide receivers stride for stride, and
there's a stat here, Mick,
on a swivel. Yeah,
there's two stats here. It says he's got stiffer hips than you like. So that's one of the, you just said hip on a swivel. That's one of the cons on him.
And needs some oil on those hips then.
Yeah, but he's got a hand on less than 10% of all targets.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not having a 33.5 vertical jump surely has a lot to do with that. Can get manipulated too easily in the press, but we probably wouldn't play him in the press. A little head nod can put him out of position. He's a very reactive player. It sounds like he's got all the attributes if he's coached well to be incredible, but needs to be coached well. Phil almost emanates back to your point about the last cornerback we talked about, Julius Brents. It's similar but different, because Brents is an absolute monster. And Ringo's big. He's 6'1", but he's rapid quick.
Yeah,
I'm not feeling Ringo. What's your thoughts?
Well, the fact that Mick says he's falling so consistently down the boards is a big concern. But again, it feels like a Howie type draft pick where he's sort of spying this guy who's falling down the draft boards, because there's going to be a chance later on to pick him up, and actually he could be.
Yeah, he loves a bargain, does he?
He loves a bargain. But it does, like, the stark contrast in the vertical jump. I mean, 8 inches is a lot, so my wife tells me. So it's a case of, if he's missing that, then that's a big concern, because that's when you're talking in terms of the contested catch. If he's getting out jumped by,
and he's not getting his hand on. He's getting his hand on 1 out of 10 balls.
That's a big concern. That means he's going to get targeted an awful lot. And can you coach jumping? No. Probably not. It's a case of, if he's going to get beaten, that how do you're going to have to be clever about how you would use him. And I'm not sure, without a back coach at the moment, that we would be able to do that. But then again, the great plan, according to Howie, could be that he's got this guy. He's going to plan to get in as the backs coach, and he's going to target these guys that no one else is looking for, so that he can target different positions early on in the draft and pick up these guys, get them coached up, and smash out the park. So,
well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's only a bargain if you wear it. That jumper you buy in the shop is only a bargain if you wear it, right? Nakobe Dean was a bargain. We haven't worn it yet.
But people thought he was going to go a lot higher, and that was more just.
Well, I think that's what Mick was saying at the start of this year. This guy was a top 10, top 15 in the last 3 months. He's dropped down there. Now I know that's I know what you're saying, because that happened on draft night. On draft night, Nakobe Dean dropped so low, and I get that. I just mean, I'm all for bargains. I mean, Jordan Mailata, hello. But you need to wear the jumper. You gotta. I'm interested. I think probably this is just me segueing into Nakobe Dean. Like, I need to see what we have there, because we used a 3rd round pick on a guy that was supposed to be a 1st round pick, and we've seen nada, zilch, nothing. And I don't know. Looking at this guy dropping down, it's like when you're at the horse racing. You don't back the guy who's going from 4-1 to 8-1 to 12-1 to 20-1. You back the guy that's going from 20-1 to 14-1 to 8-1 to 4-1. That's the guy you back, because someone knows something you don't know. Someone more intelligent or more in the know than you knows something that you don't know. And that's where you jump on. When I say you, I mean the royal, not actually you.
Yeah, but the ironic thing would be that if you or I were at a horse race putting bets on horses, the fact that there's a horse called Keely Ringo, Ringo would be why I'd bet on him.
100%. Yeah, I'd be all in. It'd be like someone putting like
you'd be betting on the guy. You'd be doing the smart bet, and I'd be betting on the guy that's got a crazy name, and I think, sure, he's got to win based on that.
Hey, listen, both can work. both can work.
No, they don't. My way does not work. My way definitely doesn't.
There was a program a while ago where they got like an expert on. It was dog racing. Can't remember the name it was, but it doesn't matter. And basically they had 4 people on there: a guy who knew his horses and went on his dogs who went on form, a guy who picked on names, a girl who picked on the color of their outfit, and then somebody who picked on the lane that the dog was running in. And the same thing each time: whatever color you like, whatever name you like, whatever lane you're in, and then the form. And the woman who picked on color won. So there you go. You can never really know for certain. The last person that the Eagles did interview at the cornerback position is a guy called Kedron Smith, and I've probably pronounced that wrong. Quarterback from Kentucky, 6 foot, 200 pounds, lacks top speed, can use his size well to disrupt. He's not even in PFF's top 50 because I couldn't get any information on him. And they said he was projected in the 4th to 5th round, but I think it's more likely to be the 6th to 7th. Apologies, don't anymore, but at least you know that they did interview another cornerback that we haven't talked about. Guys, an hour and 50 minutes into the podcast, rather than doing a review of one of the mock drafts which have been shared, I think we can probably push that back to the next one. And any concerns we had about having enough content to talk about when we were talking about coaches and a position group for the draft, I think have gone out the window now. I think we're good to do this moving forward over the next few weeks.
We can talk.
we certainly can. All right, Kate. Well, without any further ado, I just want to thank you all for listening in. We are the Next Man Up podcast. We are the British and Irish Eagles. Please do, if you're a member, check out your emails and the WhatsApp group for news on our 2023 membership. If you haven't already signed up to the trip we're doing to Philadelphia in 2023 in November, then please also do that. We will be back next week with, I think, Devin Caney from 94 WIP. And we will give you more information. We'll probably be doing the offensive lineman next week as well, which would be quite interesting, as I think we are more likely to take an offensive lineman in the 1st round than we are a cornerback. And I will leave you with that. Mick, thank you. Phil, thank you. Everyone listening in, we'll speak to you soon. Go Birds!